Like we said, relentless coverage for the last 3 nights now. And in case you want to take part in this conversation, you can tweet us with the hashtag HelenPOK. Do remember to tag us at IBN Live. We'll put the spotlight on the atrocities committed by Pakistani state institutions, the army and the ISI. And our report has been lauded by governments both at the centre as well as in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. But on the other side of the border, in Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif and his government have once again done what they do best, and that is to raise the Kashmir bogey. They've made some demands which many experts here have said the 4-point proposal is dead on arrival, once again shifting the blame to India. Now, while India has already sent a stern message, all eyes are on that crucial speech which will be made by External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj in about 30 minutes. Will she counter Islamabad's claims?
CNN-IBN story has dominated headlines now for over 48 hours. Pakistan on the back foot over Kashmir as images of this growing revolt grabs eyeballs, not just in India, but across the world. It's already been a trend buster on Twitter, now going beyond a mere impact. In a major CNN-IBN coup, the story has been acknowledged further and taken forward by the government of India. India's UN mission has issued a statement, and I quote, "It's regrettable that the delegation of Pakistan has once again chosen to misuse the UN General Assembly session to distort reality. It was stated that Jammu and Kashmir is under foreign occupation. It is, except that the occupier in question is Pakistan."
मैंने ये भी कहा था कि अगर कुछ अनएक्सेप्टेबल रेफरेंसेस पाकिस्तान करेगा तो हम राइट ऑफ रिप्लाई एक्सरसाइज करेंगे. तो मैं आज आप लोगों को कंफर्म कर रहा हूं कि हम अपना राइट ऑफ रिप्लाई एक्सरसाइज कर रहे हैं. We have extended repeatedly a hand of friendship to Pakistan, but at the same time we have said that any cross-border provocations will also be responded to.
All the more significant as Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj is gearing up for her address at the UN on Thursday, a speech which sources say will have the final approval from Prime Minister Modi himself. Meanwhile, CNN-IBN's story of atrocities by Pakistan's state on occupied Kashmir had repercussions in Jammu, where protests broke out and effigies of Nawaz Sharif were burnt. Many who still have relatives in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir confirmed the injustice being meted out to their kin.
हमारी नरेंद्र मोदी से ये मांग है और केंद्र सरकार से ये मांग है कि मकबूजा कश्मीर को आजाद करवाएं. और ऐसा अत्याचार नहीं होना चाहिए, क्योंकि ये बहुत ही शर्मिंदगी की बात है कि ऐसा हो रहा है.
Adding further credibility to CNN-IBN's reports out of POK, former separatist leader Shabir Chaudhry says that the situation in occupied Kashmir is actually much worse, and this is the first time the world is seeing the reality.
The situation is worse than what you come to know from these media reports. Pakistan is now trying to impose, national action plan. They're applying anti-terrorism laws in Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. The resentment is growing, extremism is growing, and people are really fed up with what Pakistanis are doing.
With not just India, but the world watching, Pakistan will have a tough time harping on the Kashmir agenda, now that the growing resentment and revolt in occupied Kashmir has been thoroughly exposed by CNN-IBN. Bureau Report. In New Delhi, this is Arunodaya Mukherjee.
So I've said this throughout the day. For far too long, the conversation around Kashmir and human rights used to be a bit of a one-way street. It was almost always Pakistan preaching from some kind of moral pedestal and India almost always being a little apologetic about it. Does that change with this new, slightly more harder stand? Is this a recalibration of our Kashmir policy? Here in our studios, we've got G Parthasarathy, former Indian High Commissioner to Pakistan. Shubhajit Roy is Senior Assistant Editor of the Indian Express. Joining us by satellite is GVL Narasimha Rao, spokesperson of the BJP. And joining us from Pakistan is Shahzeb Jilani, correspondent with the BBC. Let me start with you, Ambassador Parthasarathy. Is this new? I mean, do you reckon that this is some kind of a recalibration, if you will? But they're willing to put this out in the public domain.
No. Look, the Indian position is quite clear. It is based on the parliamentary resolution that the whole of Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India, and the only thing that remains is for Pakistan to hand over occupied territory. What I believe we have been rather lax on is that on the other side you have two entities. What they call as Azad Kashmir, which is Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, which is largely Mir Puri, the Hagheni Kashmiri speakers. And then you have the larger area, Shia-dominated, of Gilgit-Baltistan. Now, what Pakistan has done is changed the ethnic composition of Gilgit-Baltistan by bringing in settlers. That's a gross violation of the status as it existed when it came. We've never taken that up. Then there are organizations like the Gilgit-Baltistan National Front, the Balwaristan National Front, with which we have been rather circumspect.
Okay.
I think, and there's quite a bit of published information even about the persecution of Shias in Gilgit-Baltistan, which we have not utilized. And I think that these are issues we must come out much more aggressively.
No, the reason I asked you that, and I'm reading this from the First Secretary of the PMI, and I want Shubhajit to weigh in as well. This is the right of reply. And, you know, look at this, the language. It was stated that Jammu and Kashmir is under foreign occupation. It is, except that the occupier in question is Pakistan. Have you seen this kind of language in an official statement?
We have never seen such a forthright thing. Because look, this whole business of this Kashmir being taken up like this by Pakistan started after in the 1965 conflict, when Ayub's effort to seize Kashmir by force through what he called Operation Gibraltar failed. And it was such a disastrous experience that even the Americans cut off all their assistance, and for which they suffered. So I think since then this has been regularly taken up, and we don't lose any sleep about it. But right now I think the government has taken a decision that we are not going to take this lying down.
The flip side, though, to that is this could be a bit of a double-edged sword, because you're publicly putting it out there. Diplomats generally tend to be very reserved in their language, particularly, you know, when you put it out publicly at a forum like the United Nations. And to get a first secretary to respond...
But this is the right of response.
Yes, I understand that.
The right of response is always normally at the level of councillor. I want to say this. This time we've deliberately, apparently downgraded it to first secretary.
Shubhajit?
Yeah, I mean, as he pointed out, it is a deliberate downgrading of the reply that has been put up by India. But coming back to the point of, you know, why till now we didn't raise this issue at an international fora. The core reason has been for 6 decades, till about 2005, there was not much available information about what was happening in PoK in the public domain.
Okay.
2005 changed that because why? Because the earthquake happened and there was international donors, international organizations, they went in there. So there was more available information since 2005.
Sure.
So documentation started taking place. What is new now is the video evidence that has come up, because so far there have been written accounts, there have been print accounts that have been published here or there, and diaspora from Gilgit-Baltistan, they have also talked about in international seminars, conferences. But this kind of video evidence has not emerged earlier. So
you know, and I think there's a larger narrative here, because if you look at, say, the Arab Spring revolutions that happened a few years ago, it was social media that was a great catalyst of it. People are willing to put themselves and their lives at great risk and use the power of social media to get their message out to the rest of the world. I want to bring in Shahzeb Jilani from Pakistan. Shahzeb, you know, again, I don't want this to descend. We don't have him yet? Okay, we'll try and go to him in just a moment if we can, as we get that link. But GVL Narasimha Rao, is this a new template that is being set? Albeit there are risks to it, by the way. This could go either way. I mean, this could invite what we always consider unwarranted international attention if essentially the government of India is saying that, look, we're willing to talk Kashmir, but let's talk about what's also happening in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. If that's the essence of what we are to make of the First Secretary's response, Vikas Swarup's tweets, and what we expect will be a similar line of thought from the Foreign Minister when she takes up the podium in about 20 minutes, there is an inherent risk to that. GVL Narasimha Rao.
Zaka, I think you have to look at a nuanced shift that you are seeing has to be seen in the backdrop of the kind of leadership that we have in the country today. And certainly, I think just contrast this with the UPA role. When Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was actually under pressure, he actually accepted to the Pakistani position of interference by India in Balochistan, that Sharm el-Sheikh declaration or resolution. I think India was in a very weak position and succumbed to the pressure. But today we have in Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi, you have a strong leader who has made a phenomenal impact on the international diplomatic level. So certainly the tables have turned in favor of the India, and the praise Mr. Modi. Just say one more sentence.
While I concede to a large extent of what you're saying, while I concede to a large extent of what you're saying, if I were to make a plot graph of India's Pakistan policy in the last 15-16 months since Mr. Modi came to office, first you had this outreach, which was very good. Everybody welcomed it. You invited Nawaz Sharif for the swearing in. Very well thought out and very well welcomed. Then 3 months down the line, India calls off the foreign secretary level talk, saying there's a new red line. You can't engage the Hurriyat anymore. Then after that, after Mr. Jaishankar becomes foreign secretary, you send him on a Sark Yatra, apparently to promote the Cricket World Cup. But anyway, he goes to Pakistan. Then after that, you have another sort of frosty few months till India once again makes the outreach to meet in Ufa. They meet in Ufa. Then you have this fiasco around the NSA talks, which never took off. So if you were to plot a graph, it's a bit of a roller coaster. It's not a consistent policy.
No, I think, Zaka, I would disagree with that assessment for the simple reason that at every stage we had an upper hand over the last 16, 17 months. The UFA agreement also, the joint statement, certainly did not go against us. In fact, it is Pakistan which is completely reneged on the commitments. NSA talks could not take place because they did not want to discuss about terrorism, which was the main purpose that was charted out there. And even in UN, I think you've seen how Pakistan was literally pleading India to have a discussion with them. So certainly, I think we have been in a stronger position for all the 17 months that we have been in office.
Let me get a quick comment from Lieutenant General Raj Kardian before I take a break. Lieutenant General Kardian, for many years now, and as a former military man, I'm sure you shared this sentiment, whenever there was the conversation around Kashmir and human rights, it was always about the human rights violations of Indian forces. It was never about the violations made by Pakistani forces inside Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. Do you feel, from the events of the last few days and how the government of India is publicly now willing to take this position at an international fora, do you feel that now they're sort of trying to level out the playing field? Call it a regressive equivalence if you want, but equivalence it is, that human rights violations are happening not just here, but it's happening there as well. So if you want to have a conversation on Kashmir, let's have a conversation on both Kashmirs.
First of all, I would like to compliment your channel, CNN IBN, for laying bare, for exposing the stark duplicity in Pakistan's stand on human rights violation. The bubble of Pakistan claiming to be the champion of human rights is totally burst. The second point is that, yes, they have been making allegations against us. We have a democratically elected government. The army does more of humanitarian work in the Kashmir Valley than causing any false violations as claimed by Pakistan. But what we saw in the last 2 days in the videos that your channel has brought out throws a total different kind of reality which perhaps the world had not seen. We suspected, sure, but the world had not actually seen. And this is going to further isolate Pakistan in the world community, combined with the strong foreign policy initiatives and the successes that India has achieved in the recent past. As far as the other points that has come up in the last 2 days is the United Nations Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's speech. It's basically a repetition of the same old song. There is nothing new that has come out, that we must demilitarize, we must vacate Siachen because that suits them. And he, of course, said that when I came into power, I had a very sincere desire to improve relations. Well, one would like to give him the benefit of doubt that Nawaz Sharif as a person is perhaps keen to move forward. But I don't think he has a say in Pakistan's running of the security and the foreign policy. That is the unfortunate part. The good part about India, I will disagree with the previous speaker, that we have had, in a general sense, a consistency of our policies. The personalities do make a difference, but to a minor degree, our policy has been consistent on Kashmir. Now, the last point I want to make is that historically, legally and constitutionally, PoK is part of India. Therefore, what is happening here by Pakistani security forces against Indians, this will further strengthen our resolve to get back PoK, which our parliament has already passed a resolution. I think that needs to be pursued by all possible means by isolating Pakistan
I'm going to have to take a break. I'm not sure if, what the last point that Lieutenant General Raj Kardian made is realistically possible anytime in the foreseeable future. But I'm going to take a break. When we come back, we'll have about 10 minutes to count down to Sushma Swaraj's speech. And we'll also get our guest to weigh in on what does this really mean, this new recalibration or this new normal that the Modi government is trying to achieve when it comes to its Kashmir policy. This sort of equivalence, is it for real? Is it a false equivalence? We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll discuss that and more, and we'll count down to Sushma Swaraj's speech live from the United Nations. India hitting back at Pakistan at the United Nations. CNN IBN's expose on the horrific atrocities in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir lends power to India's counterpunch.
मैंने ये भी कहा था कि अगर कुछ अनएक्सेप्टेबल रेफरेंसेस पाकिस्तान करेगा तो हम राइट ऑफ रिप्लाई एक्सरसाइज करेंगे. तो मैं आज आप लोगों को कंफर्म कर रहा हूँ कि हम अपना राइट ऑफ रिप्लाई एक्सरसाइज कर रहे हैं. We have extended repeatedly a hand of friendship to Pakistan, but at the same time we have said that any cross-border provocations will also be responded to.
Watch all the updates and analysis on this world-exclusive story that has changed the template of talks on Kashmir. Only on CNN IBN. Welcome back. We are counting down to Sushma Swaraj's speech at the United Nations General Assembly, where we expect her to give a rebuttal to what Nawaz Sharif said yesterday. Many of those proposals, the 4-point proposals that he put forth, many experts here in India feel they're dead on arrival. Here in our studios, we're still in conversation with G Parthasarathy, Shubhajit Roy, and also GVL Narasimha Rao is joining us via satellite. So is Lieutenant General Raj Kardian. In terms of what Nawaz Sharif said in his speech yesterday, again, would you agree with Raj Kardian's assessment that it was just the same old song?
I mean, if you take the first thing, he says, we agreed to the ceasefire, please agree to it. But he misses out the most important point. November 2003, you had a ceasefire. Within 2 months, Musharraf gave an assurance that territory under Pakistan's control will not be used for terrorism. He kept that assurance. So all I would ask Nawaz is, fine, we go back, but you give us that assurance. He wouldn't have the guts to do it. He doesn't have the powers to do it. Then he talks about Siachen. Now, Siachen, if you go through the 1949 agreement, it says from Kargil it goes north to the glaciers. Siachen is clearly on our side, and though it was never demarcated. So there's no question of his handing out. And next time he says it, I'm going to say, fine, we'll withdraw from there, you withdraw from Gilgit-Baltistan.
Okay.
So these are scoring points, debating points for him domestically, that he said these wise things. Nobody is seriously in the going to take
and especially so because of the flack that they received after Rufa, where Kashmir was missing from the joint statement and so on. So I guess it plays to the domestic audience to a great extent. But Shubhajit, I mean, by doing this, I mean, by putting out these videos and by publicly taking a position on Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, how do you see it? Is it a bargaining chip, as in when a future dialogue would happen between India and Pakistan on the Kashmir issue? Or is this playing to the larger, if I may use that phrase, not just BJP, but the extended Sangh Parivar narrative of a unified valley in that sense?
Well, it could be, Zaka, but I mean, what is the strategic objective behind this, outing of this video, revealing of this video? Is it just to name and shame Pakistan, or get the international community interested in their part as well, their state of affairs, and whether that will goad them back to the negotiating table, where the two parties, India and Pakistan, can talk in a civilized manner, where
But why would this goad them? I mean, wouldn't this sort of push them away even more? If that is the idea, if it is to try and bring them to the negotiating table, wouldn't this sort of push them further away rather than the other way?
Well, naming and shaming of people can, can really prompt people in different ways. So this particular tool could be used as a bargaining chip, as we were discussing earlier. Having said that, we have to play this. I mean, the Indian government has to play this card very, very carefully because, as you pointed out in the initial remarks, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
We too have a lot of things to, talk about or not feel very proud about. So it remains to be seen what is the strategic objective
in doing this. GVL Narasimha, in other words, I mean, I'm not going to sort of hold my words back here. This sort of James Bond style of diplomacy, if you want to play that game, it is going down a bit of a rabbit hole, but at the same time, here's the question, and this is a question that both Mr. Parthasarathy as well as Shubhajit would want to ask you. Are you using this as a bargaining chip, or is this fitting into this larger narrative of, unified India, Akhand Bharat and so on, which of course has been a famous quip of the extended Sangh Parivar?
I think, Zaka, that remark is quite, unjustified. And unified Kashmir is the demand of entire India. I think Indian Parliament has passed a resolution unanimously. So I don't think this is a party agenda or agenda of the Parivar. This is what India has always articulated. This is the position that we have articulated, but successive governments have not been able to realize or have not been able to really push that forward.
Look, while I agree with you in principle, let's face it, GVL Narasimha, if you look at the recent history of Indo-Pakistan relations, and Prime Minister Vajpayee was pragmatic enough to realize this, he started the process of trying to normalize, and the only workable solution, let's face it, the only workable solution is making the LOC into the de facto border. Mr. Vajpayee realized that. He had the foresight and the vision to realize that. He started the process. Manmohan Singh continued it. Unfortunately, it didn't happen because Mr. Musharraf got thrown out of power. The point is that is the only realistic solution. You can put out this video and use it as a bargaining chip, like Shubhajit said, goad the Pakistanis to come to the negotiating table. But if you seriously think that this is the strategic objective, that you're going to get to this place somewhere down the road, I think you're just kidding yourself.
No, Zaka, I think the whole world has realized that Pakistan has no interest in pursuing a particular agenda. I think they simply do not want to have friendly, neighborly relations with India. I think this is the kind of an enmity they want to sell to their own domestic constituency. This is what they want to use as a bargaining chip to get a lot of aid from other countries. This is something they do it as a compulsive requirement. So whatever we may talk to them, it will not please them. I think you will have to show the mirror to them how they have completely how they have mishandled the situation in PoK, how PoK is completely bereft of any development progress, how I think how human rights have been violated and oppressed for a long time. I think this is a reality that this is the ugly face of Pakistan, which we have to hold a mirror to.
Talking about holding mirrors, Lieutenant Rajkadian, I mean, for the longest time, since we put out the story 3 nights ago, we have been trying to get a reaction from any of the separatists, whether it's the Mirwais, forget about Gilani, because you wouldn't expect him to say anything even halfway close to being against Pakistan, but even the moderate folks have not said a word about what's happening to their own brethren, to their own Kashmiri brethren on the other side. I mean, if anything at all, does this expose the blatant double standards of the separatists, that while you have Indian forces and they cry hoarse about human rights violations in Jammu and Kashmir, if the same thing's happening on the other side, somehow they're deaf and mute to it?
Yes, what you are saying is true. This video not only exposes Pakistan's double standard, but will also expose the double standards followed by the separatists. So while they cry themselves hoarse about the human rights, the imagined human rights violation in the valley, they are keeping mum on the same thing that is shown to them visually happening across the LOC. So I don't think the separatists will have any moral right after this either to claim to be part of a dialogue which they have been claiming and Pakistan has been accepting to talk to them, or to speak on behalf of the Kashmiri people as they are.
I'm going to take a break at this point of time. When we come back, hopefully we'll have the live feed from New York. It has been delayed. In fact, just like what we saw last night with the Pakistan Prime Minister, he was delayed for a bit. I'm given to understand that Sushma Swaraj's speech, which was due for 10:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, has been pushed back by a bit. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll have continuing coverage of this story, the CNN IBN relentless coverage for the last 3 nights of this of these atrocities that are happening inside Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and how and why this could potentially be the start of a recalibration of India's Kashmir policy. Quick break. We're back in a couple of minutes. Welcome back. We're getting myriad reactions to this story. In case you want to take part in this conversation, you can tweet us with the hashtag #HelenPOK. We spoke to former Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah. This is what he had to say on CNN IBN's expose.
Mr. Abdullah, how do you respond to this video, which is now doing the rounds in Indian media over the last 24 hours, of Pakistani atrocities which are being committed against citizens in Pak-occupied Kashmir, where citizens of Pak-occupied Kashmir are saying that we want freedom from Pakistan?
Well, I'm not entirely surprised because Pakistan has tended to take the moral high ground where Kashmir is concerned, quite sort of removed from the actual facts on the ground. They're very quick to point the finger towards India for alleged incidents of human rights violations.
Do you think this has been going on for a while? You would say that this has been going on for a long time?
Well, one has heard whispers, murmurs, when we've attended conferences in other parts of the world, particularly looking at the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. You've had people from Gilgit, Baltistan, the northern areas, the tribal areas, actually talking about the problems that they've had and been a little cut up with politicians like myself from this side of Jammu and Kashmir as to being completely focused on our problems and not highlighting theirs on the international stage.
Yeah, so, because every time I look at the video, and I was looking at it on my phone also when we started off with this interview, what it actually shows is that there's a completely new narrative which is now being put forward by the Indian establishment. Because for the longest time, these accusations which we are now leveling against Pakistan were accusations which are leveled against us, particularly in the state of Jammu and Kashmir.
Well, we've always been apologetic, unfortunately, with regard to Jammu and Kashmir. I mean, we've allowed the world to believe that Jammu and Kashmir didn't get a plebiscite because India didn't want it. The truth is that Jammu and Kashmir didn't get a plebiscite because Pakistan didn't allow the conditions necessary for that to be created. So it's all very well for the Pakistani Prime Minister to stand up in the United Nations and try and take the moral high ground. But the fact of the matter is that they've got more to apologize for with regard to the way Jammu and Kashmir has been handled than anybody else does.
So when the MOS in the Prime Minister's office, Dr. Jitendra Singh, who's now gone on record, posts this video, which was first shown on Network 18 and on CNN IBN, when he says that this video is living proof of the kind of denial that Pakistan has been in, this video is living proof which will open the eyes of the world. You would subscribe to the points, to the theory which is being put forward?
Well, obviously, I mean, this one video shows conditions as they are in Pakistan or in the parts of Kashmir that they occupy. But it is only one video. This will have to be a sustained narrative for the world to really catch on to what is happening there. Please understand, we have been the victims of their propaganda ever since 1947. It's going to take a lot more than one video for the world to wake up to the extent of the problem on their side of the line of
That's
control.
What I was asking you. That, it's all very well for this video to have come up. For instance, authorities in Pakistan, Sharif has gone on record saying that this is nothing else but typical Indian Intelligence Bureau propaganda. Would you simply dismiss this as mere propaganda?
Well, I'm not. I won't dismiss it. I think it would be. I think it would be foolish on the part of Pakistan also to dismiss it. As much as they might want to do that internationally and publicly, I can understand that. But privately, I think they need to take more note of this video and what it shows, because clearly they have a problem that they're either unwilling to accept or they're trying to brush under the carpet. Either way, it's not good for the country, it's not good for the population, it's not good for the neighborhood. This is essentially a part of my state, divided as it is. It is my state, they are my people.
And you think these visuals, you think that if I was to describe it as a visual campaign, you think that this visual campaign is an excellent diplomatic tool, which is now in the hands of India and continues to
I would be worried about us using it as some sort of propaganda diplomatic tool. This is a human issue.
Because I'm looking at all the statements which are being made by top ministers, and I'm told that Sushma Swaraj, the foreign affairs minister, because she's now going to be speaking at the UNG summit, she will be referring to this. So
rightly so. I mean, who opened the door to this? I mean, our Prime Minister didn't really talk about Kashmir when he was in the United States of America. It was the Pakistani Prime Minister who waxed eloquent yesterday from the podium. So they're the ones who have set themselves up for India to actually use this video in whatever presentations they make in the United Nations.
So one of the things that Omar Abdullah said there is, it's more than just one video. I mean, if one video can capture this, then the reality should be far more gruesome. And Mr. Parthasarathy, I want your thoughts on this. I mean, recently, and we are hearing this news in bits and trickles, a lot of local people there have been protesting against these myriad projects under the umbrella of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And we haven't heard any of this reported either in the Pakistani press or even in the international press. Much of this passes through disputed territory. I mean, is that simply because Pakistan has such a strong control over news filtering out of there, or they just don't want to offend China?
Absolutely, especially the Chinese projects are more through Gilgit-Baltistan than through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. And I told you, the local population, which is Shia, lives in mortal terror, one from the army and two from the settlers who are normally Pashtun Sunnis. So, and it is sparsely populated. And then they've got the Chinese sitting on their head in large numbers. So yes, I think one does get this sort of thing. And then worst thing now which is happening is busloads of Shias getting killed by Taliban-style people. So they are in a deep quandary, and Pakistan keeps an iron control. Nobody can get into Gilgit-Baltistan without a permit.
Again, I want to go back to the reference about the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. I mean, be as it may, our reservations, and I understand that privately we have told both the Pakistanis as well as the Chinese that we have reservations with some of the areas through which this passes. But so what? I mean, they're going ahead with it.
Yeah, not just privately, Zaka. We have said this officially, publicly as well in our meetings, in our public articulations. Well, the Chinese presence has been a reality in PoK and Gilgit-Baltistan for many, many years now, primarily because of two reasons. First is PoK is and Gilgit-Baltistan, that area, is very rich in rubies, world's best rubies, and very high quality marble. So natural resources are very important there, which China wants to mine. Secondly, it has a huge hydropower potential. So China is building dams there, and so it has, apart from that, it has huge strategic significance as well, because that corridor is really the one which connects them to Xinjiang, to Central Asia. So that's very crucial. So for Pakistan to let anybody report any discontent or any resentment because of those projects or because of the living conditions there is next to impossible. They cannot let, so no international journalist has ever reported from a dateline that I remember from PoK.
Which says Gilgit-Baltistan
or PoK.
Yeah.
So that really sums up what he said, that the filtering of news outside PoK is very, very controlled. So I don't foresee Pakistan annoying China or letting the dirty secrets out from their cover.
Most important is 1963. Pakistan actually ceded and handed over to China a part of Gilgit-Baltistan, which is Jammu and Kashmir, in the Shaksgam Valley.
Yeah.
So even that is an issue which we have taken up. And the Chinese tell us, no, this has been ceded to us. All this depends on a final settlement. But the Chinese have been, since the 60s, far-sighted enough to claw into this region. And now they're finding it as their gateway to the Indian Ocean.
Okay. GVL Narasimha Rao, as we await Sushma Swaraj's address, and I am given to understand that it's been delayed by about half an hour because the previous speakers have been taking more than their allotted time. I want to go back to this, strategically, and governments, both BJP as well as Congress governments, have taken this conscious decision that any attempt to try and internationalize the Kashmir issue, you stay out of. I mean, our standard quip has been that this is a bilateral thing. It's up to New Delhi and Islamabad to settle. By putting this out publicly, at a time when the international community honestly doesn't seem to care too much about the Kashmir issue, really, aren't you inviting unwarranted international attention, which could potentially open a Pandora's box?
No, I think, Jaka, we have, even in the UFA statement, the joint statement, I think it was very clearly stated that India is willing to discuss all outstanding issues with Pakistan. And that would have certainly included Kashmir.
No, but that is
but
bilaterally.
Today, I think, you see, internationally, no one, you see, Pakistan made sincere attempts to really get UN debate this particular issue. They have written letters talking about some imaginary wall that was going to be built by India.
Yes.
But Nawaz Sharif also had meetings with Secretary General UN to rake up this issue. But Pakistan is really knocking on a closed door. No one internationally is willing to discuss. We are willing to discuss Kashmir with Pakistan, and today the focus could certainly, and the focus would suddenly be on the PoK, on the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, much more than Kashmir Valley, because things are going absolutely fine in Kashmir Valley. We have had very peaceful elections. We have had very phenomenal participation of people in Kashmir, in Jammu and Kashmir. So certainly the focus in bilateral dialogue covering Kashmir issue would be largely focused on PoK. I think this nuance shift is possible. I'm saying that is what the sense that I get.
I want to get a closing comment from Raj Kadian, and again I'm asking you this as a former military man. One of the things that Nawaz Sharif said in his speech yesterday was about the United Nations Military Observers Group in India and Pakistan, which many here in India say is a dead-on arrival issue. I mean, it was settled ages ago. There's no reason why we should go back to that. But if you were to extend the logic of this recalibration by the government of India, which is that, look, we're willing to talk Kashmir as long as we can talk about Pakistan-occupied Kashmir as well, why wouldn't the Pakistanis then latch on to it and say, let the military observers into both Kashmirs?
I agree with you. In my view, it will not be a wise step for India to internationalize the issue. We should keep it confined to bilateral relations that was agreed from 1972 and at least on 2 occasions thereafter. As far as the UNMOGIP is concerned, that the United Nations Military Observers Group, I think they had lost their relevance after 72 when Shimla Agreement took place. India has been taking that stand, and that stand, I believe, should continue. The other point, whether we should use this footage as propaganda value, again, if we do that, then we are stooping ourselves down to the level what Pakistan has been doing.
Yeah.
This is already in existence. Whatever they say in the world fora hereafter, the world will believe it less and less. As it is, the Kashmir issue had become a rhetoric. Everybody knew it. The world had lost interest in it long time ago. When Pakistan Prime Minister reads out a statement in the General Assembly, actually knowing Mr. Nawaz Sharif or his reputation that he is a man of peace, he is a man of industry, he wants to economically develop Pakistan. One wonders whether what he was reading out was out of his heart or just out of his lips. He was given a script. The problem with Pakistan Basic is who rules Pakistan?
Yeah, I think that's been a long-standing problem with them, that you have the civilian administration saying one thing and then you have the army going and doing something else. But I want to thank all our guests, G Parthasarathy, Shubhajit Roy, Lieutenant General Kadian, as well as G.L. Narasimha Rao for joining us here on this hour as we conclude this 1 hour, this continuing campaign that we've had for the last 3 days, this video that has emerged which shows atrocities in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and on the back of which there is a recalibration of the government of India's Kashmir policy. At least they're willing to publicly put this out there in the domain, in the international fora like the United Nations. Whether this will work, whether this is a mere temporary tactic, negotiating chip, if you will, or if this is some kind of long-term strategic objective. We will wait and see. We're going to conclude this hour as we count down the final few minutes before we hear from Sushma Swaraj, who we are told will also be rebutting Nawaz Sharif's speech that we saw yesterday from the United Nations General Assembly, as well as referring to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and what's going on there, the reality there. Thank you if you're tuned in. Do stick around. We will be back with live coverage from the United Nations.